January 28, 1986. A crisp, cold morning at Kennedy Space Center. The Space Shuttle Challenger stood on the launch pad, a gleaming white symbol of human ambition, ready to pierce the heavens. Millions watched on live television, including schoolchildren across America, eager to see Christa McAuliffe, the first teacher in space, make history. The countdown echoed, a familiar rhythm of progress. 10, 9, 8. But behind this public spectacle, a tense drama had unfolded just hours before. The night before the launch was anything but routine. Engineers from Morton Thiokol, the company that built the solid rocket boosters, were deeply worried. The temperature had plummeted overnight, far below what was considered safe for launch. They feared the rubber O-rings, critical seals in the booster joints, would become brittle in the cold and fail to properly seal the superhot gases. They presented their data, their charts, their fears in an urgent late-night teleconference with NASA management. Their recommendation was clear and firm. Do not launch. What happened next is a textbook case of pressure overriding caution. NASA managers, facing intense pressure to maintain a demanding flight schedule, pushed back. Delays were expensive and politically embarrassing. They challenged the engineers. Prove it will fail, they demanded, instead of the standard, prove it is safe. The burden of proof was reversed. After hours of heated debate, the engineering managers, under immense pressure from their own executives who were being pressured by NASA, reluctantly signed off on the launch. They were told to take off their engineering hats and put on their management hats. A fatal compromise was made. The next morning, as Challenger thundered into the sky, it was a picture of triumph for 72 seconds. The crowd cheered. The commentators marveled at the power. But inside the machinery, the engineers' worst fears were coming true. A puff of black smoke visible just after liftoff was the first sign. It was the sound of a failing O-ring. A jet of flame began to lick the side of the massive external fuel tank. At 73 seconds, the flame burned through, igniting the tank's liquid hydrogen and oxygen. The Challenger didn't explode in the conventional sense. It was torn apart by catastrophic aerodynamic forces, disintegrating into a horrifying cloud against the clear blue sky. The world watched in stunned silence. The triumphant ascent had turned into a national tragedy in the blink of an eye. The investigation that followed, known as the Rogers Commission Report, was relentless in its pursuit of the truth. The iconic physicist Richard Feynman famously demonstrated the O-ring problem with a simple glass of ice, water, and a piece of the rubber material. He showed how it lost its resiliency in the cold, proving the engineers' initial concerns were entirely correct. The technical cause was an O-ring failure, but the root cause was a failure in decision-making. The disaster became a turning point not just for NASA, but for organizational culture everywhere. It was a brutal lesson in what can happen when communication breaks down, when dissenting voices are silenced, and when schedule takes precedence over safety. The "go fever" that had permeated the agency was brought to a screeching halt. NASA's safety protocols were completely overhauled. Whistleblower protections were strengthened, and the chain of command for making launch decisions was fundamentally restructured to give engineers and safety personnel more authority. It was a painful, system-wide reckoning. 7 brave astronauts lost their lives that day. Francis Scobie, Michael Smith, Judith Resnick, Ellison Onizuka, Ronald McNair, Gregory Jarvis, and Christa McAuliffe. They weren't lost to an unpredictable accident or a random act of fate. They were lost to a series of choices made by people under pressure. The moment of no return wasn't the explosion itself. It was the quiet, agonizing decision made in a conference room the night before, when a chorus of warnings was overruled by a single, fateful yes. The Challenger story is a solemn reminder that sometimes the most important moments in history aren't the loud explosions, but the quiet whispers of caution we choose to ignore. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share. It's through remembering these lessons that we honor those we lost and strive to do better.